we live? All right. Hey guys, we're going to continue working on the Spelljammer campaign that I'm building for my Eberron home table. Give me a second here to go through, to check my signal, make sure I'm coming through, and then I'll go through my quick intro, and then we'll get back to work. So give me a second here, doing a mic check, 1, 2, 3. Give me a second here. And it sounds like I'm coming through okay. Cool. So I'm going to punch some buttons across the Discords, interwebs, and blahs here real quick. And I will hopefully keep you amused for the 30-some-odd seconds that it takes for me to process this stuff before we actually get to work. So, hey, my name's Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and I publish them online. And I've been focusing my attention on Spelljammer here for the past year as we're building out new mechanics for use in 5e for combat, exploration, and just expanding the idea of adventuring in D&D through Wild Space and the Astral Sea. And so I run a D&D 5e campaign table for my home team. We just finished our most recent 20-level campaign. I typically run a campaign from level 20 in about 200 to 250 hours, and we just finished the third in Eberron since we started playing 5e in, 2015-ish? So now we need a new campaign, and they're pretty excited about Spelljammer being on the table now that the supplement that I've been building is going to be publishing next week. So we need a new campaign. We've got new mechanics. Let's build a Spelljammer campaign. So give me a hot second here for me to just finish up where we are at here. And I'm going to press this button, pull that down there. Let's see. Big shout out to the Spelljammer Preservation Society. They like my stuff. I like the ideas that come across here. It's a super cool Reddit to hang out at. If you're on the Twitter X platform, I'm at Phil Kearney. If you want to get notifications of when I go live in the future, which is like 12 times a week, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get. We've gotten more subscribers since this morning. Thank you so much to everyone that's taking an interest in the projects that we're working on here. If you want to get notifications about when we're doing more artwork or game design in the future, you can follow me here, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. Here's the full playlist of all the content that we've created for Spelljammer in the past year, including this book cover, which was back around episode 15. But we're going to be focusing on task management today. So this is a read-only document that we're looking at right now. Once I get all this stuff fleshed out and I play at it a little bit with my home table, if it's jiving and seems like it's got room to expand, then I'll flesh out some of the stuff to be a little bit more cohesive and easier to grok, and then I'll put it out there as just a general document that people can check at. So if you're interested in this stuff in the future, there's a link to my Patreon. If you hit the About page, you'll find a link to my Discord channel where you're most welcome to hang out with me and sharpen your knives. And if you want to support me by tipping $1 or whatever to Patreon every month, that is really appreciated. But so as we've discussed before, and I won't dwell on the past too much, but using Adam Hancock is our editor for the Spelljammer Combat and Exploration book. And he also created Balduran's Guide to Kingdom Building, which is a take on organizing a community or a kingdom or a town with a player character sheet where you have 6 stats that he refers to as industries that you build up for ability checks, similar to like making a strength check to open up a door. You might use a military check to crack open the border of an enemy nation that has blockades in place. Or you could use like a commerce roll to, instead of charisma, to cajole influence into that same nation to be able to loosen those borders so that you can have trade moving back and forth between your communities, even though you may be ideologically opposed to each other, which could be a factor of opposed faith checks. But we're limiting the palette of expression inside of this campaign to commerce, lore, loyalty, and military, which we've talked about a number of times in the past. We're breaking these down basically into 4 active and 4 passive tasks. Passive tasks are performed by your guild organization between sessions. They're typically resolved in 1 or 2 die rolls, depending on how much resources you have invested in each in each industry determines basically the stat that you have in that ability that will allow you to modify your die roll, and then it's just a pass fail like most ability checks are, and that feeds information to the DM about did they succeed at the task that they allocated to their guild, or did they fail the roll and thus trigger complications. And those complications prevent them from making progress while also simultaneously creating plot hooks that the team can then act on as individual tasks that their cleaning crew or their specialists need to go into to resolve as a sort of episodic adventure format while the players are in control of this guild organization, which we're framing around the idea of being asteroids in orbit around the planet Eberron, where different factions have control over different geo-positioned geo-positioned, no, it's orbitally locked positions in, no, what's the word for that? Is it locked orbit? Locked position in orbit. Tidal locking between a pair of co-orbiting astronomical body occurs when the objects reach a state where there is no longer any net change in its rotation. That's not what I mean. Tidally locked, that's not what I mean. Tidal locking. Is there a way to lock a satellite in a position in space? Very precisely controlled. Time satellites will drift. And is there an issue with satellites in real life? Much harder time saying lock satellite in place. It doesn't look like there's like a real quick term for this. To lock a satellite, your best bet. Okay, so to hyper. You want to cheat? There are various ways of precisely control. Yeah, okay. So we'll just call it geo-locking. So these are geo-locked positions in orbit. There we go. Geo-locked positions in orbit that different territories control, while the asteroids themselves remain in motion around the planet, and there's more coming in. So here's the story. The planet got basically the gatekeeper druids detonated the core of the planet to force it to be out of alignment with the plane of Dalcor, the realm of nightmares. Dalcor, of course, are the psychic overlord dream masters of the Sarlona nation. So when Eberron got shunted out of its normal orbit by that explosion, that then made the center point of where Dalcor would occur off orbit by each square is 10,000 miles. So a number of tens of thousands of miles away from where the actual planet is supposed to be. And this kickstarted the airship campaign of building craft that can travel between the shattered remnants of the planet's crust, which is basically floating asteroids with their own little seas and river systems and stuff on it, like little basically miniature moons that are controlled by one or more nations, or like the Rock of Karnath or the Rock of Thrain, or like Aundair and Brayland have a mutual asteroid that they share, but they're separate nations in that space. Like Kabara has a lower altitude towards the core of the planet than, say, Sarlona does, which is in deep orbit at this point. The Aranel elves have basically orbital trees that they gather in these asteroids that are clustering to be able to pull carbon and other resources out of that rock to basically act as a gritty earth to build these trees on. So now they have like 1,000-mile sized trees that they build their space colonies inside of, that produces so much air that there's no real concern about them ever running out of it. Now they're just trying to make sure they can build the infrastructure to help the trees grow and flourish so that they can push them out into space to go colonize another world, in their generation world trees that just drift out into the nether. So you've got the team has a couple of different territory plot points, territories inside of this cluster. They can't have anything in Aranel, Dargoon, Sarlona, or Droam space, but they can start off at the closest. This is the neutral zone. The central is where Eberron itself is at. This is a neutral zone where there's a ring that is orbiting around the planet, which is called Hub. and it's a neutral spot. And from hub, you can descend to the asteroid worlds of close Eberron, and then inside of that space, there's the core, which is the morning, which is a magical radiation that basically creates spell storms of anywhere from cantrips to level 9 magic that can hit anything that gets inside of the cloud system and cause any amount of different types of magic. The lower the lower elevation you have towards the storm, the more magically enhanced your region becomes. Kabara, Agonessen, and Zendrick, for instance, are in a much lower orbit than the nations of Corvair are, which are at normal distance from the core and has a fairly normal daily life cycle. While more things that are further away from the planet become less and less magically inclined, but that's where psionics start to thrive, out in the crystals where Sarlona likes to dwell. So the Dargoon, Aranel, and Droam, for the most part, exist in that space where magic is fairly like we expect it to be. Only Sarlona is drifting far enough away from the core of the planet to be able to really have psionics become the dominant power source for a society. So each one of these squares is a 10,000 mile plot of territory. These are different options that are available. The team is going to pick which territory, where they want their territory to be, this 1, 2, or this modeled third territory area. They'll start off with three. They'll start off with 3 territories. 2 of them are going to be orbiting hub, and then another one will be at the second tier. The further away in squares you get, the more rare the metals become that are available in the rocks, and the less mined they are. Since these things are rotating in orbit around the planet and are slowly spiraling down towards the planet itself, then as an asteroid goes through these different territories, these different protectorates, they get picked at and chewed on by different, like Dargoon might find, hey, there's a big chunk of iron coming our way. Let's build some ships with it. So they'll work their ass off to mine all the iron out of it. And by the time it gets to Aranel, it might only have just like trace amounts of ore left, but all that rock is something that Aranel wants anyway. So as a giant as a giant expanse of space plants, it only kind of makes sense that they sort of filter out rocks over time to act as soil for these living trees that are being created in space. But also, at the same time, Droam has a large population of gargoyles that dwell among and can feed off of rock material itself also. So whatever doesn't get caught in the webbings of Aranel, or that comes in from broader orbit into space here, has a chance of stumbling through Droam. And since Droam processes rock similar to how the elves do, then there's a high chance that once it goes in, it's not going to come back out. It's going to be clustered and gathered. So there's also this wide angle of entry from the outer system into this 2-1 space before it gets into that mill. Here is a tight sort of like a congested area. This is by far the least sought territory of the free plots that are open, but it might be all they get access to. So we're going to see what the team wants in our session tomorrow, and we'll see how that plays out. But that's a quick crash course. But talking about the druids, since the gatekeepers destroyed the planet, this caused all of the material to fling out into far orbit, and so a large portion of the gatekeeper resources are out there, drifting in the nether, finding these pieces of eberron and trying to push them back to the planet. If they push enough rocks back to the planet, it'll eventually be able to have all that fused together and create a whole planet again. To them, in a life cycle of hundreds of thousands of years, they're looking at the long game of, we had to temporarily destroy the planet so that we could protect it from destruction from the nightmare realm. But now that has been effectively permanently overridden, we can now push all the rocks back into Eberron and let them fuse over time to rebuild the world. The problem is that so much of the world is not the surface shell. Most of it was the deeper layers in the mantle, which is called Kyber in Eberron, which is the realm of the Underdark, which is where demons and abominations and aberrations dwell. Dalkir rise from the depths through there, and that's the dragon below. There's all sorts of cults and temples and demonic influences and mutations and monstrosities that dwell in these hidden spaces. But when they destroyed it and they flung that all out into the outer realm, Kyber still existed, but now it exists inside of these asteroids that are being pushed back by the Druids. The Druids are fine with Kyber existing. It's just the nature of the world to have that element of evil. But now that element is clouding around the outside, and the Druids are pushing it into orbit so that it'll fall to the core and bond with the magical stuff there to be able to start rebuilding the planet outward. And it's going to take thousands of years for them to accomplish that goal. And of course, all the humanoids, all the sentient races that exist on the planet that have survived by developing airships into spelljamming ships that can go out and mine this stuff, are taking all of the resources out of these asteroids that are supposed to be in the planet's core, and they're fighting. As they dig open these asteroids, they crack open that little space of Kyber that's in the core of all these asteroids, like a miniature little planet. The darkness is inside. So as you crack it open to get to the elements, you're unleashing that evil. And so you need delving teams to go in to fight the evil that's inside. And each type of rock can have a completely different system. So you can't expect what you're going to find in each of them. They're going to be affected by the ore and the size of the rock that you're working on, which are things that we're figuring out as the campaign proceeds. We're getting some initial ideas of how that stuff works now, and as God's willing, if the campaign sticks and they're having fun with it, it'll be able to flesh out to more and more bits. But added complications is the gatekeepers know that the sentient races are mining these asteroids that are supposed to be falling back into the planet. The Druids don't particularly care whether a city on an asteroid gets smashed in the process of this reunification. It's for the good of the planet that gatekeepers are most beholden to, not the species that come and go that dwell upon it. So their goal is the core of the planet, and to serve that core, regardless of whether or not humanity, elvenkind, dwarves, gnomes, whatever, regardless of whether any of that stuff survives or not. Because once the planet is whole again, the dragons will be able to recreate life in their own images. And of course, the dragons at Argonesson have a prophecy about all of that, and they're fully on board with it, of course. So that's the process that we're going through. Those are some of the overall like background threats that exist inside the campaign that can create seeds of adventure. Like a new asteroid comes into orbit, it's heading for your territory. If we do some prospecting, we can use Scry to take a look at like what field is out there and use our clairsentience to basically do remote viewing to try to identify what kind of rocks are coming into orbit and where should we send our mining crews to exploit the ore from that, and what's something that is a threat to a community and hub that we might be held responsible for if we don't clean it up, or what can we potentially watch drift past our territories into enemy territories that maybe we'll try to get a piece of on the way out anyway, even though we're not inside a protected territory. That means that our mining crew is open to attack either by alternate nations, rival mining corporations that are taking active espionage, or even just monsters from further orbits that are following the whatever valuable material is inside the asteroid. Maybe they smell it and they're attracted to it. Like there could be shadow dragons out there that are catching wind of a mountain of platinum that's slowly drifting in orbit, and maybe they want to nest there and make that their treasure trove. So they dwell inside this citadel of this dragon's lair of platinum walls. And if you can clear the dragons out, then you can harvest the rock. So you may find a big chunk of rock that's floated through a couple territories that no one's touching. Why is that? Because there's a really, really high level threat that's sleeping inside that a high level of, like a high level clairvoyant picked up on the evil that's inside of it, and it's like, yeah, we need to leave that one alone. So like you specifically don't mess with it. But a particularly low prospecting check might pick up that there's a valuable ore. They might not pick up any ore, but like a medium roll might get you, yeah, there's ore here, and here's the percentage of ore that we think is present in that asteroid for us to harvest. And a really high die roll might be able to say, here's the threats that we think are tagging along with that asteroid that we're going to have to resolve, either with a delving team going into the rock once the miners start splitting it open, or things that are on or in orbit around that rock that will need to send fighter craft and mecha pilots out to fight on the asteroid on the outside of it, so that we can even land a mining crew safely onto the asteroid to start work in the first place. So these are some of the ideas that we're playing with right now. So what I want to do now is, this is our 11th episode, so we started this from scratch in episode 1, and we've been building up these resources and these ideas on how to process these things. So today we're looking at acquisitions, which is gaining new resources, what things you need to check or not. We've already fleshed out a lot of delving in combat. Espionage and diplomacy was something that we played with last time. Extraction was the first one that we worked through to assess the level of quality of rock that you have, the difficulty of each material to be able to extract based on the type of material that it is, the corresponding DC for the ability check needed to be able to extract that ore, and the amount of resources that can be gained off of mining that particular rock. Each cycle is 10 days. It's a 10-day, like from Forgotten Realms. There's 10 days per month, and rocks move fast enough that they cycle in and out of basically any kind of prospecting that happens inside of one of your territories is there long enough for you to be able to roll once. If you have like here you have 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. If you have a rock that comes in from 2 into 1, 1, 1, and then goes into Dargoon, you've basically got 1, 2, 3 10 days to be able to extract ore, which means that you'll be able to make 3 different ability checks for each 10 day. And we're only, as far as like table sessions, every 4 table sessions, we're updating this background information about what's drifting in orbit, how much of it are you able to extract, and were any complications created that your team now needs to go in and do something about because your miners are in trouble, or there's pirates, or there's space monsters attacking things, or you're now in disputed territory. Blah, 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 blah. There's any number of adventure hooks that we can create off of these circumstances as these things come and go from your territories, which is where the episodic approach to the adventure is. We'll have 3 sessions where we run a sortie, either as a combat mission, a delving mission, some sort of espionage mission, or a diplomacy mission. Those are the 4 active themes of adventure that we have inside of the campaign, which could be extrapolated to any style of campaign that you wanted. We just happen to be framing it around an asteroid belt mining colony guild sort of thing right now, just because that's the flavor. But if this plays out right, and we could build generic fantasy, we could do dungeon delving with this, but the more social interaction with rivaling factions there are in a sort of Civ 5 sort of sense of it, the more we can use all 4 facets of challenges inside of the game space using the general mechanics that we have set up here. So there's acquisitions, and I think we've gotten pretty much everything. We got everything down to a point where we can start messing around with it and finding details. There's still prospecting and scouting. So let's get into that. We know that scouting is a military activity that's so passive tasks and active tasks. Active tasks are things that we assume players are going to want to do. Space combat, dungeon delving, heists and espionage missions, and diplomatic envoys. So, and if we frame things around the same general mechanics of having group checks where successes or failures on ability checks trigger damage either dealt or taken, then we can parse out any kind of combat mode that we want, whether it's weapons out, social combat, espionage, pressure, border patrols. These are different ways we can flavor the basic ability check mechanics from 5e, which is something that Adam Hancock had explored a lot of in the Baldur's Guide to Kingdom Building that we have been deep diving into further, which is why I wanted to hire Adam in the first place, because he was the brainchild of this ability score community idea that I absolutely love, though I'm bending those rules a lot into my own style, as I often do. So scouting is searching for hostile forces in or out of your territories. Requires patrol ships, either fighter craft, vessels, or command stations. Make military passive check to determine yes, no, how much. We know the check is going to get more difficult the further away from hub your territory is, which is something that we have established quite some time ago. So let's go back up here. Yeah, it's here in the extraction information. Let's see. That's the general mechanic. Here we go. Orbit. Orbit range. 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, 4 square, 5 square plus. So this is the core of what we need. Let's see. 7, 13, 19, 25. 7, 13, 19, 25, 31. So the DC is to get a read. Like, how difficult is it for you to get an assessment? The closer to hub we are, here, I'm just gonna. Five-room dungeon, which is the way of the delve. So the further from hub we get, the higher the DC becomes. So sitting here looking at this offhand, here's our the DC here is only a DC of 7, then it's 13, then it's 19, then it's 25, and then it's 31. But if the team like starts here in low orbit, like 1, 2, 3, like if these are the only 3 territories they have, to be able to patrol this one, it would be a DC 13. To patrol either of these, it would only be a DC 7. With a first rank military, they're basically rolling a D20 plus 1 plus 1D4. So their range is going to be anywhere from 3 to 25. So it's very possible, like if they were to build out, they don't have the resources for it because it's expensive. But if they were to build out resources, they could chain resources out like this. This would be, they get this mini for free. This would be 9, 16, and 25. That's 41. That'd be, this would, to have this chain of resources available, it would cost them 50 resources. And if they are successful in low orbit, like in this low orbit, they only get 1 point of resources per square. And in the second range orbit, they get 2 points of resources. They get 3 points of resources here. They get 4 points of resources here. And they get 5 points of resources here. If the material is too fatigued, if there's not enough of it, they will get less resources. So if we're back here again looking at our resources skew, and this is all stuff that the DM can easily do, but the players can roll it out if they're interested in doing so, but they don't have to. So in orbit 1, 15 to 40% of the resources are left over, while meanwhile all the way out in 5th rank orbit out here, there's anywhere from 75 to 100% of the resources are available. And each point of resources here, it goes anywhere from 0 resources, which is just dead rock that doesn't provide any resources at all. All the ore is gone. And iron and copper gain 1 resource each, all the way up through adamantium and dragon shards are 5 resources each. And so it's more and more likely. Here's the die roll that you make for where you are in orbit to compare with the degree, the DC for what type of rock it is. So that's not right. Where is it? Pop, 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 pop. There we go. Rank, difficulty, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, espionage. Where is this? Is this delving still? Let's see. That's right. That's literally what we're doing right now. We're doing prospecting. So we need to, prospecting needs to suss this stuff out as well. So let's grab this. Hold on. Let's see if we can suss this out. When you make a check, the result of your die roll, your ability check, is the percent that you... oh, that's right. We need to know how much percent of each asteroid has resources that can still be extracted from it. Because if a rock comes into orbit, into your territory, your second ring orbit territory, it'll have anywhere from 30 to 55% left. And in one go, like our second rank prospecting team is going to roll a D20 plus D6 plus 2. So that's going to be anywhere from a 4 to 28. And that number that you roll is the percentage. Is each pip on the each number of the result equals a percentage that you extract from an asteroid. So if you get an asteroid at the second degree in second range orbit that, like, say, has 35% of its material left, and you roll a 25, then you're going to be able to successfully extract resources from that because your die roll was good. But that also means that 25% of the ore that remains was consumed in the process of you extracting those 2 ranks of those 2 points of resources, meaning that there's only 10% left. So if it's in orbit with you again, if it's still in your territory and you want to take another crack at it for another 10 day, you can do so. But if you roll a 10 or above, that rock is completely cached and gone, and it's no longer able to provide any resources for you. So that's essentially how that works. It provides you with its listed number of resources until its percentage is exhausted. So a high orbit is going to have a high percentage of ore that's present, and that the likelihood of that being a more valuable resource is similarly high as well. So this should actually be down in the prospecting section. Nah, I can leave it there, but I'm going to copy it, and it should be down here and extract in the prospecting area as well. So let's see, what is the difficulty of assessing what the rock is? We should be able to... A die roll should be able to both resolve what the material is and assess the threat on the rock. So how do we want to do that? I still have 20 minutes left, so we're doing okay. Let's see. The closer it is, the easier it is to check. So these DCs are good. So this is going to be... spotting DC, and then this is how that should be. Risks should be the high ones. And then spotting can be low. Is that a good range? Maybe 4, 10, 16. Can we do that? 4, 10, 16, 22, 28. That's too high. 4, 5. I like that 7. I like how that's ramping in difficulty. So I think I want to keep that. But this can be resolved with a single die roll. So you'd roll the die, and if you get in low orbit, you get a 4. If you don't roll a 4 and it's in low range, in the lowest orbit, if you fail the spot roll, you have no idea what kind of ore is actually inside the rock. And then beyond that, you certainly don't know the risk that's going to be associated with attempting to extract anything from it. If you hit the spot check but fail the risk, you'll be able to assess what kind of ore it is, but you won't know what risks are attached to it. If you hit both the spot and the risk, then you'll know what type of ore it is, and you'll have a decent idea of how dangerous the threats, that if there are threats, and if there are, how dangerous are those threats. That's the idea behind that. So it's a dual roll. The die result that you get is going to do double duty in so result of die roll equals total % to extract, while up here in the extraction process, let's see, result of the die roll equals total % extracted. So we need to look at type of material and %, risk equals level of difficulty securing the rock. That feels right. Determine the scale of difficulty, SOD, to safely extract resources. So now we have to set a risk level associated with each material that's present. So let's put this front. Each territory, so this is how this works. Each territory you control has a free prospecting check each 10-day. You can spend orbit resources to prospect territories you don't control. Hey Tyler, how you doing? Yeah, prospecting is to determine what you can mine, while extracting is actually mining it. So if you don't know what you're putting your miners on, they have no idea what it is they're going to be attempting to extract, and they don't know what kind of risks are associated with actually trying to do that. Hold on, let me fix my chair here real quick. It's good to see you, Tyler. How you doing? We are sending kids. I don't know where we got kids from, but yeah, potentially, sure. Okay, so if the team controls these 3 territories, each square is 10,000 miles, and it takes 10 days, 1 10-day, for the rocks to rotate in orbit out of each territory. So 1, 2, 3 squares takes 30 days. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. It'd take 20 days total to be able to rotate. It'd take 200 days for rocks in this first rank orbit. It takes 200 days to be able to rotate around in full. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. No, 16. 160 days to be able to go around in orbit. While out here, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 20. So the second rank orbit would be 200 days to be able to make its way around. And anyone, and you only have this small little bit of territory until you can buy up more territory. If it's first rank, you're going to be gaining basically, depending on what the material is, the rock will determine how many resources you can get from it. So but the lower the orbit is, the more likely it is to be a lower quality rock. So when we're looking at our prospecting here, the orbit position, when you do your check, the DM would roll 1d6 plus 2 to determine which type of rock is going to be in orbit. And where did that go? Did I cut that and not paste it? There we go. So d6, so a d6 plus 2. That's the percent. And then what type of ore is a d4? So in this first orbit, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So it could be anything. You're always going to have dead rock, which is just rock, no orbital value. But then you'll roll a d4. So when you successfully prospect, you can detect that there's rock that has a valuable mineral in it. And that'll either be iron, copper, silver, or electrum. And you can gain a number of resources from each of these types of rock equal to whatever is listed in the gain category. So if you're way out here with adamantium, you could potentially gain 5 points of resources. And just for comparison, if I wanted to acquire a new square of territory, it would take me, like, this first rank orbit costs 1 point to acquire a new territory. Second rank costs 4, the 9, 16, and 25. So for me to advance and for me to get a new territory, they have to be connected to an existing territory, so I can continue building a safe pipe or a supply chain to go from hub, where all our embassies and smelting refineries and stuff are at, to be able to float out to the out space. So for me to be able to purchase a territory, it has to be open. And if it's open, or I could buy it from another organization if I wanted to. But once I acquire, I have to spend that many resources. So for my team to acquire, like, say, this rank here or this resource, this territory here, they'd have to spend 4 points. And so they would, if they can only, and if they're successful in mining the 3 plots that they have right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, it'll eat all 4 of their resources to acquire that next square of territory, which is fine, because then they would be able to potentially extract 1, 2, 3, 4 points worth, 4 territories worth of resources. But they also have to do, like, for example, you burn resources on rerolls. So if you want to re-roll a check, either while you're in the adventure or while you're doing passive exploration checks like this, every time you want to roll the 20-sided die again to change the effect, it'll cost you 1 point of resources. So at low levels, your characters are going to be stuck with whatever die rolls they have during the course of the adventure, which could end up getting their characters killed because they can't re-roll their dice. But as they gain higher and higher ranks and command more and more territories, they can afford to take a fistful of 20-sided dice and throw them at the problem until they get a natural 20, if that's how they want to burn their resources. It'll be up to them to assess how much a resource is worth to them. But every industry can do things for free each 10 day. But if you can prospect a territory that you control. But if you want to prospect a territory that you don't control and risk sending a team out to prospect a rock that you have no pipeline to, I could come all the way out here to 1, 2, 3, 4. I can come all the way out here to the 4th rank, like way out here away from hub, where I have no protection whatsoever. It'll cost me 1, 2, 3. It'll cost me 4 points, 4 resources just to prospect that area. And so if I find that there's stuff looking at there, then I have to spend 4 additional points to send a mining crew out there. And if I'm out there at the 4th rank, and if all there is silver out there, I'm not going to be able to extract enough resources to be able to recollect the 8 points I just spent finding out there's nothing but silver out in that territory right now. So the game heavily penalizes you for trying to prospect outside of your pipeline, but you can do it if you accumulate enough points. Military scouting works under the exact same principles. You get free scout, you can do a check for free in any territory that you control, but the DC continues to climb as you move further and further away from hub. Because your territory is, unless you get to a point where you can build a scouting post. So if you can build a scouting post, that becomes a new hub that you can then scout off of in further and further spaces and further ranges out into space. But you'd have to build a pipeline to that command post in the first place, and you can't actually build a command post until you have a 5th rank in military. And to get 5th rank in the military, you have to spend 4 points to get the 2nd, 9 points to get the 3rd, 16 points to get the 4th, 25 points to get the 5th. That's going to end up being 54 points in total. Well, if you started from scratch, 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, that would be a total of 55 resources that you have to spend to create an entirely new pipeline in a direction like here. If there's nothing here, you could build out 5 for 55 points. And if you're only getting 4 resources a chunk, it'd take a campaign. Just like you would take a whole campaign to build your characters from level 1 to level 20, similarly, it'll take an entire campaign for you to build your guild from 1st rank to 5th rank. to be able to have that much military presence in orbit for you to be able to build an entirely new command structure that you can then use as a waypoint to start buying in resources cheaply again. So this wouldn't be 5 points anymore. This would only be 1 point. And this would be 2 points. And see here, here's your command station here, and you have your new command station here. This middle point is still going to cost 3 because it's 1, 2, 3 steps away. 1, 2, 3 steps away. Although you could technically cheat that if you bought, like, say, let's make it so that catty corner doesn't work. So if you want to buy a guild, you're going to have to snake through it straight like this. Like there's no diagonals. So you have to build it that way. That'll help assure that we're maintaining an accurate reading of pipeline. So we're figuring it out as we go along. That's the point of this ideation development stream, is to suss those things out. And similarly, when you're scouting, the threats can exist. So the rocks themselves have threats inside of them, and prospecting will help you determine if there's a threat present on a rock, as well as determining what the ore material is that you'd be extracting from it. But then on top of that, there is scouting is patrol ships and scrying to detect, is there threats in the territory outside of the rocks that you're going to also have to deal with. There could be pirates in the area. There could be wild space monsters in the area. There could be poachers that are already digging on the rock that you have to clear off. This is a passive check that you can make along with prospecting to see how safe is your territory right now. And if you wanted to scout in territories that aren't your own, and if you fail your die roll, risk losing your patrol, you'd then have to spend a point of resources, 1 to 5 points, to purchase or acquire through acquisitions a new replacement crew to be able to be your new fighter pilots. And the players can at any time decide to drop characters into any of these roles. Like if you're doing a scouting check and you know there's space pirates out there, the team could have the military as a passive guild check, have the scouts deal with them, and they'll just make a single die roll and it'll either succeed or it fails. If it succeeds, you clear the pirates out. If it fails, you potentially lose. You either don't get rid of the pirates or you even lose your team, and now you're down a patrol. You'll have to spend resources to replace them. Otherwise, you can't search that area anymore. So the team could instead decide, we know there's pirates there. Instead of having our guild passively resolve that threat for free, we're now going to make an adventure out of it. So the team then either takes their preferred team or just builds in like 2 minutes. It takes like 2 minutes to build a character. So you build a new character. So now you have a team of now you have Red Squadron, a bunch of TIE fighters or whatever, going out to fight space pirates. And then they would be able to resolve that as a combat challenge while they're inside of this 10,000 mile space hunting pirates amid different asteroids. And so now I get to build an asteroid threat. So let's burn some thinking on that. So let's build this out, and let's go with, if we're looking at, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here is a 10 by 10 grid that represents, a zone is 10,000 miles, so each one of these squares represents 1,000 miles. So you can, these ships can fly 1,000 miles per hour, 500 miles per hour. Basically airline travel, but that's a lot faster than what an airline can do. That also means that you can cross 10,000 miles per day. So over the course of a 10-day, you'd be able to have a fast assessment and have the opportunity to respond to any threat that's inside of this 10,000 mile space. It's part of that's why we're making 10 days our default time frame to reset stuff, because we know that your team can get from wherever they're at to that territory within a couple days and be able to scout it and resolve anything, and then fly back to hub within a reasonable time period inside that 10-day space. So we can kind of float how long it takes to get from territory to territory by just using that default, everything takes 10 days to resolve. And since the cadence of the campaign at the table is 3 sessions of adventuring and then 1 session of hub updates, and then depending on what your guild is encountering in orbit, now you decide what your next mission is going to be. So while we're in a mission here, I could potentially look at the higher percentages that we already have built into this table to be what percent of space is full of debris. So if we're like say in our second rung territory, got it. Where are we at? 55 minutes. Shit, we're running out of time. I'm gonna fudge it just a touch. So if we're out here, where are we at? If we're here and we're nope. Thank you. If we're in our second, like if we're doing a scouting check here to see if there's pirates in this territory, we're going to use our second ring of orbit. So that orbit is going to be full of 30 to 55% debris. So let's roll that real quick. It's a d6 plus 5 times 5. I rolled a 5. Plus 5 is 10. So this is going to be 50% full of asteroids in the region. So when I build out, I'm just kind of spitballing here with you guys. But if I were to build this out as a territory, scouting, I'd be able to do something like, I don't know, probably something like this, but maybe I can do it. It's 50% exactly, so maybe we can juice this a little bit. Let's build a block. Let's figure out how I can. There's the gap. Find the gap. There you go. Now I can take a chunk of that there, and like a chunk of that here, and 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 then like a chunk of that here, here. Lump those together like that. And let's peel off a piece of there and put it here. And then there we go. So there, that's our asteroid field that we're messing with right now. And so if the team knows that there's pirates in here, and it's their job, they've chosen this mission to clear them out, then they can come along through here and look for. It's a combat encounter. So they can come into here, and I can have an enemy ship here, and the team squadron is here, for instance, and they can navigate around using movement to try to find the pirates. Maybe there's 2 factions of pirates, and they're waiting for an ambush, so like they could be coming along here. So when the team updates their movement to being here, now they're getting flanked by 2 pirates from behind. Now they're in a fight. and they can dive into more and more detail about complications. There can be all sorts of monsters that are actually dwelling in these different asteroids. If they had a poor, the prospecting and the scouting can work together to assess the quality of rocks that they're looking at, the level of threats that are in those rocks, and what the general threats in the region are at that are external forces that are going to have to be dealt with. So now before you can send your mining crew in here to deal with this, you have to take out these pirates. Otherwise, if your mining crew, maybe it becomes more difficult to mine, and if they fail to check, you don't get any resources at all because the pirates took your miners. So you lose your miners. So if you're picking up on pirates or poachers or monsters, you have to clear them out so that it's a safe place to send the miners to. And now, once they're on an actual rock, you have to send a delving team in because you already know that there's bugs inside of here somewhere that you're going to have to kill out. So it has multiple stacks. You could just leave that delve to your guild to deal as a passive action because you want to spend your time maybe like performing a heist to go rescue some political hostages that got taken by Sarlona from your scouting crew that you need to go rescue to get back before they give away all your secrets, for instance. So maybe your team wants to focus on that, which means now this season you have to leave this piracy to your guild as a passive action with one single die roll, resolving whether or not your scouts are able to deal with the pirates, potentially burning additional resources to re-roll the die or accept where the die falls, and if they failed, that now gets escalated as a higher level difficulty that if your team ignores long enough and the difficulty escalates enough, you could potentially lose this entire territory to pirates overall. And now you have to choose, are we going to use espionage, diplomacy, military to extract them from, to be able to get your territory back so you can start mining it again. So, and if you lose all of your territories, you now no longer have your own charter, and you now have to sell off to a larger organization, and then they give you, they basically become your boss, and they'll give you a territory to manage. And if you then buy up enough territory or enough resources to buy your own territory, you can then kick off of that and then go start another guild somewhere else. So even losing everything is only a temporary setback, because you can always just get recruited by another. They're looking for people with skills. You had a bad run. Maybe under better management, you guys will fare better. Then you have an opportunity to build up your resources under directed tasks. And once those tasks are completed and you get enough resources, you can then relaunch your charter to be able to go out and start claiming territories again. So that's the idea behind it. So last session, when we were here yesterday, we went through the process of risk versus rewards and how much trouble you create for yourself if you fail to check, by what degree of difficulty are you escalating, and if you succeeded beyond the minimum necessary, how much success do you gain out of that? So it's a simultaneously scaling system that lets you. It really leans into the idea of ability check challenges. Like it dives like almost to the level of combat. Like it exists. This degree of skill challenges exists in a space between just a single die roll and combat action economy. It's in that space in between. So if the team wants to get involved with it, then they can create all sorts of this is the adventure. So we're going to be creating new threats and new problems inside that territory while they're still attempting to deal with it. So that's the idea there anyway. So I'm out of time, but I feel like this has actually been pretty productive, even though I've been on ramble mode pretty hard. It's walking through the mental processes of how these different things are supposed to resolve. I'm seeing a lot of similarity between scouting, prospecting, and extracting. And acquisitions is even easier as long as what you're trying to acquire is within the rank of industry. That's a loyalty. There's military, there's commerce, lore, loyalty, and military. And so commerce is extracting and delving is allocated to commerce. And then you have lore, which is prospecting and espionage tasks. And then you've got loyalty, which is acquiring new resources. It's also diplomacy, as in like these active are adventure nuggets. While over here, the passive are guild tasks that the team isn't actively participating in. So like you don't typically extract like going like a square by square mining mission. Like if I were to break this down into a mining operation and I want to get to like it'd be like Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, right? I'd take my character over to here, and then I'd make an ability check to dig through the stone, and if I fail, I lower the difficulty by 1. I then attempt to check again. If I fail, I lower the difficulty by 1. But meanwhile, I'm chomping my way through this stone. On the third check, I've dropped the difficulty by 2 already. Maybe the difficulty is only now like a 10. I hit that. I break apart this rock. It's not there anymore. And now each one of these rocks could have a resource in them. But the team isn't necessarily interested in doing that as an activity. It could be the theme of a mining operation. Wherever you crack open a new rock, there's a % chance that you either find risk, reward, or both. The risk would be some sort of poison, a hazard or a monster of some sort. And a monster would be like, you just cracked open a 5-room dungeon. So now that you breached this cavern space, you now have a 5-room dungeon that you need to resolve. So you could potentially spend months and months of gameplay digging through rocks, cracking open new layers that you clear out, and every time you clear out a layer, there's wealth that's been gathered in there by the monsters that are layering there. But then you continue tunneling through this place, and it could just be a matter of how many of these rocks can we tunnel through. Like if this was the asteroid itself, and this is all the cavern space that's open inside of it, and these are all the rocks that haven't had any mining extracted from it, and these dots, if we're using virtual tabletop, the team wouldn't be able to see inside of this space, but this could be almost completely hollowed out, and it's just a shadow dragon's den. So when they crack that open, it's coated in platinum and electrum, but fuck, now there's a shadow dragon we have to deal with, and now we pull out our delving team, and they start fighting the dragon in a combat scenario. And once they kill off the dragon, then you can go back to your extraction mission of delving through this asteroid to dig out minerals. But that's not necessarily fun role-playing stuff unless you're just going on a round-by-round basis of digging through the rocks and then only zooming into action economy of combat when you crack open a lair or a hazard that has to be dealt with. But so far, the team hasn't really been interested in that depth of managing an asteroid. They'd rather just pan out and just roll a single die and have the ability to check, verify, were they successful or not. And if they weren't successful, it's because of a hazard or a lair. And now for them to go get that resource is no longer available until they go in as either an NPC single action to extract, or go in as a delving team themselves to go fight through the 5-room dungeon to get all that stuff. But it's all using the same action economy. It's just depending on how minute of a detail, they're zooming into more and more precise details. And at some point, it becomes character active because you're dealing like at the 5-foot scale of digging through rock 5 feet at a time with dwarves. It works. It really works. Now it's a matter of panning out the mechanics, so we're dealing at a level of like we're panning out or into a level that's narratively entertaining. Like fighting pirates in ship-to-ship combat as a squadron is fun, potentially. Maybe a couple go, like maybe every 4 or 5 missions, that's fun. But we have 4 different gears that we can shift between different types of nuggets of adventure: diplomacy, espionage, combat, and delving. Delving is like actual spelunking, looking at traps, overcoming hazards. Combat is fighting stuff, either hand-to-hand with your pickaxes, or at the galactic scale where you're sending carrier fleets out to launch an assault on the nation of Sarlona. And you have everything in between with mecha pilots, fighter craft, warships, graduating up to command stations that control territories. Similarly with delving and asteroids at the 10,000 mile scale, it's just a single die roll to see did your team or did your team not succeed at extracting resources from that square. Espionage, same thing. You need to get something from someone, then they don't want you to have it. You're either able to SEAL Team 6 it out of there, or you aren't. If you don't, it means your team got shut down, either killed or captured. Now you either have to let them go and spend resources to replace them, or you can send your team into their own espionage combat, or espionage diplomacy, or diplomacy combat mission combo to go and try to extract that team from whatever bunker it is that they're being captured in. So there's all these different types of adventure already exist inside of general RPG game space. We're now just trying to simplify it because, again, it's my lunchtime team. I have 1 hour a week with 6 people at the table. How can I punch through an RPG environment fast enough for them to all be participating in the course of 1 hour, but to have meaningful progress so that they can start building a narrative around what their guild is and what their characters accomplish inside of that single task. They'll have 3 sessions, which is a 3-hour dungeon run. As a delve into a 5-room dungeon, you can clear a 5-room dungeon in a 3-hour period. You can do it. You can do it. You just can't. So that would be the 3-hour session that they have. And then at the end of that, we would do a system update to see where their guild is faring next. And then what task do they want to take? What I would then, the DM would then allocate what the updates in the system are that are relevant to the team. Here's your new prospects for extracting wealth. And you can make an extraction check to see what's there. And we'll update you later. Here's your update on scouting for pirates and monsters. Here's your diplomatic front of who has a problem with you where. And here's how your espionage missions are coming along. Or here are counter-espionage measures you're going to have to take because you found spies in your embassy. And now you have to deal something with that. So these are the different ways you can funnel these different type of adventure, these episodic adventures together. Anyway, that's the idea. Oh, I get it. Miners. Thanks for that, Tyla. You get your dad jokes on now, man. You only have a few months to practice. So keep it up, pal. Congratulations again. So anyway, that's it for the session. I'm gonna have I actually have my live session with my table tomorrow. So I have enough here to help them get their characters up and running, for them to pick the territory that they want, and to do the initial dice rolls, so that when we come back next week, on Friday, if everything goes according to plan, I'll be able to give you guys updates on what kind of characters they're running, what their die rolls were, what that means for processing, so that when we come back the next week, we'll actually start to be able to do that. So depending on where they're at and what they roll and what they want, I'll have Friday, Monday, and Tuesday, this and next week, to process that stuff, which I'll do live here, whether they watch or not. I don't care. But it only starts with a nugget. And they'll have an idea of what that nugget means, and then they'll deal something with it, and whether they're successful or fail will cause that nugget to continue to expand out into chaos for the next 3 weeks. So that's where we're at right now, guys. I gotta go. Tyler, thanks for showing up. Anyone else that's interested in this stuff, please be welcome to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. In the description down below here, we have my Discord group as well as my Patreon. All this stuff will eventually be on my Patreon. It'll also be available for people to play test. This will be a Kickstarter that I will send out on the ttrpg as the first project I do outside of the D20 5e game space. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take for me to get it to a place where I'm happy with it, which shouldn't be. It might be a year. We'll see. But there's no need to rush it. I got other things on my plate already. But this is absolutely going to happen. It's too much fun. So anyway, that's it for now, guys. I'm out of here. Thanks a lot, and I'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow morning with more Eberron token art. So hopefully I'll see you guys there. Laters.